Hello and welcome to the webinar Using Blockchain and Advanced Analytics for Responsible and Sustainable Sourcing in Agribusiness. Let me introduce you to our speakers. First, we have Prabith Kalathil, who leads the regional operations for Neelant in Africa. He has more than 18 years experience across various areas, including market research, consulting, sales, and business development. As a certified change practitioner and regional lead, Prabith is entrusted with enhancing the company's image in the region through building strategic relationships with clients, partners, and industry stakeholders. Next, we have Yogesh Singh, who leads the strategic alliances for data, AI, IoT, and blockchain with Neelant. He has more than 22 years of experience across the telecom and fintech space. He is currently leading the global Microsoft Alliance and delivering data-led business transformation projects, enabling customers to utilize data to achieve more for less. He is passionate about emerging technologies such as blockchain and how it can change the world for the better, along with complementary technologies such as AI and IoT. With that, I would like to hand it over to Prabith.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caitlin, for that introduction. A very warm welcome to all of you attending this webinar. It's my absolute pleasure to host you today. And this is a part of series of webinars that we are conducting, which will focus on addressing specific challenges faced by various industry players. For those of you who are joining us from South Africa, Sanbonani, Goeiedag, Molweni, Dumelang, and I hope you and your families are safe and doing fine. We are in lockdown level 2 and hope that has brought some relief to you and your daily activities. Some of us have obviously joined offices and slowly getting back in the new normal. So we are very grateful to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules. And I'm sure this is going to be quite an exciting webinar, especially given the topic that we're discussing, which is traceability. So before I delve deeper into the agenda, let me set a bit of a context in terms of why this topic, right? And where did its genesis about traceability. I think whenever we talk about traceability, the first thing that comes to our mind is scrutiny, and scrutiny in the food production over the years has steadily increased due to food safety recalls, consumer demands, and sustainability efforts, definitely. Now, food safety has become a growing concern for citizens of many countries. I mean, we are hearing about outbreaks of diseases in animals that could be transmitted to humans, or the presence of chemicals above acceptable limits in feed and food. It can threaten both the quality and safety of products. So the need to be able to withdraw, or what we call as food recalls, identified as unsafe, has become essential to protect people from foodborne diseases. Traceability is, the primary definition of traceability and is seen in the books of risk management. Now, tool which enables food business operators or authorities to respond to that need. It is definitely a cornerstone of many a country's food safety policy, and definitely the pandemic that we are experiencing today of the size and scale that is definitely has further and intensified the need for scrutiny in the food business. Now, while it is important to see traceability in the light of being used as a risk management tool, it also comes with some additional benefits. And when I talk about benefits, I'm going to be detailing it out in the webinar, but it is around efficiencies, how it can actually help improve the overall supply chain. And by supply chain, we are referring to any industrial supply chain, be it agriculture, seafood, herbs, clothing, leather products, industrial goods, and many. A well-designed traceability system immensely boosts what we call as communication amongst various role players and allows for a fast, speedy, clear, concise, and timely communication of data and information, aiding for better management decisions. Now, we are also increasingly seeing that many organizations wanting to explore this concept to provide vital information to consumer. Now, we all know about how responsible today's consumer has become, and we see ourselves as individual consumers as well. So when we go and buy something, we want to know where it's been actually sourced from, where it actually comes from, where it actually originated. And Yogesh, who will be talking about the specific use case around food traceability, is going to touch upon some of these critical aspects. Now, during the course of the webinar, we are also going to touch upon these and share some real life use cases, how it's actually applied to real life problems. It definitely calls for greater collaboration amongst various players from the industry, as well as those who can extend technology and broader ecosystem support. So, so with that, let's get rolling. And to start with, I'm gonna just briefly take you through the agenda. And the agenda talks about a high-level overview of who we are as a company, that is Nihilent, traceability as a concept and its importance, a primary role that technology plays in traceability. So we all talk about digitalization, we talk about cutting edge technologies. You heard about blockchain, AI, IoT, all of them. How do they actually come together? We're going to be touching upon some basic concepts of blockchain. It's very important, vital to understand that, and definitely the detailing of the use case around food traceability, and definitely some closing remarks and the Q&A around that. Yeah, let me just jump to the next slide. So to start with, I want to actually give you a brief overview of Nihilent, who we are. We are a global consulting and services company that uses a human-centered approach for problem solving and change management. And as far as our global spread is concerned, we have offices right across all the major continents, including Australia, Asia, Africa, where we were born, UK, Europe, and definitely the Americas. Definitely, I want to kind of like spend a couple of minutes to just share a little bit overview about our positioning statement. Since we were born here in South Africa back in the year 2000, it's more than 20 years of association with the country. And as far as the positioning goes, there are a few reasons why we actually crafted this positioning statement. Today, the very existence of enterprises hinges on the ability to listen and respond continuously to the changing market demands. I think as customer is all pervasive, so taking up a close look at the customer needs, wants, and aspirations hence become a paramount factor for being relevant. And I think every organization today facing this pandemic is going and reimagining and repurposing themselves to really ensure that they are relevant for the future. While the demand from the enterprises has always been to be nimble and agile, the recent developments emanated because of the pandemic have exerted more pressure on them to be far more adaptive, far more efficient, and far more innovative in their approach to respond to these changing conditions. And so taking a human-centered approach, I think, is of essence. And that's where Nihilent realized that it's important for us to wear that human-centeredness and being of relevance to our clients and bringing this concept around. Nihilent's comprehensive range of expertise in process and technology enables customers to achieve a new height of business performance. And in today's webinar, you're exactly going to see that, how given our wide range of competencies around process and technology and our ability to unpack real life business scenarios, we've been able to deliver on this promise. Definitely, as an organization, there is a bouquet of wide range of services that we offer. And just looking at the wagon wheel, we provide transformation consulting services. We provide specific services to clients who are embarking upon their digitalization journey. As part of it, as part of this endeavor, Nihilent is actually at our offices here in South Africa in Bryanston. We have opened a user experience lab, which from where we definitely talk about specific areas around interaction design, very important when it comes to human-centeredness. We deal with extensively on various aspects of technology, and some of these named out here, but we're going to be touching upon during the course of the webinar. Last but not the least is our partnership with various OEMs like the Microsofts, the SAPs, and various product houses, wherein we have got extensive capability of implementing what we call as ERP, CRMs, various product offerings for that matter. Let me quickly jump to the subsequent slide, which is where we now start talking about what we deliver. So what we deliver is exactly the same, that we help to write transformation agenda for our clients. We help craft the roadmap for change and transformation. We definitely help organizations in their ability to write their business case for optimizing various services. And last but not the least, which is very important, is also to help organizations craft an entire story around innovation, around relooking at their business models, around adopting technology and the innovations in the technology to realize its benefits in its business operating model. So something which is very core to us. Coming to the specific agenda for today, which is traceability, I thought let's start with having a common understanding about what is traceability. So I've just actually highlighted a few examples here. As per WWF, which is World Wildlife Fund, it says traceability is defined as the systematic ability to access any or all information relating to a food under consideration throughout its entire life cycle by means of recorded identification. Now, there are some very important and relevant definitions out there which we'll be unpacking. I also looked up the definition which was put up by International Organization for Standardization, ISO, which we dearly know, which defines traceability as ability to follow the movement of a feed or food through specified stage or stages of production, processing, and distribution. So again, it is not just the entity on its own that we are also, traceability goes deeper into identifying the various forms of change that happens into the basic entity of the item is very important to be understood. So it's an all-encompassing solution from when we look at from a traceability system point of view. The ISO 22005-2007 standard also goes at quite a detailed extent in terms of defining it further, defining some of the key principles of the food traceability system. And it says, and it makes special mention to trace the flow of materials, which is feed, food, their ingredients and packaging, identify necessary documentation and tracking for each stage of production, ensure adequate coordination between the different actors involved. Now, if you are aware, the entire value chain or the distribution chains that we talk about, there are various actors. Each actor has its own input and its own output. So it's very important to establish the flow. Ensure adequate coordination between the different actors involved. Improve communication among the involved parties, and most importantly, improve the appropriate use and reliability of information, effectiveness and productivity of the organization. So, it is not just about putting a system in place. It involves deep integration. It involves deep analysis. It involves deep integration amongst various players. So it's quite extensive. It is some of the traceability system that we are aware is active and running. One of them being talking about the IFT, that is Institute of Food Technologies, in partnership with WWF, which talks about an extensive network of more than 70 odd organizations that are actively tracking seafood traceability, for that matter, because of various reasons. Now, it's quite complicated, it's quite intricate, and it calls for great amount of collaboration amongst various parties that are spread across the entire globe. Coming to some of the benefits, I thought it will be good for us to just briefly touch upon. So when we talk about benefits, obviously, we talk about food safety and early identification. So prevention is better than cure, right? So how do we ensure that we have got practices which allows us to act quickly, act nimble, in terms of when it comes to food safety? If there are food recalls that are available, do we exactly know what is available where, and what parts of their entire value chain are impacted, and how can we actively recall these items? It definitely enables businesses to monitor and defend against risk in real time. So we touched upon the risk management element. It talks about near real-time availability of information, allows for improved decision making. So supply chain is quite complicated, it's quite intricate. We have touched upon that aspect, but availability of data and information right across the entire supply chain, available to various stakeholders at the tip of their finger allows them for greater flexibility. So it definitely a traceability system and with greater visualization, deep data integration allows for business decision makers to make those decisions very quickly. It definitely fosters communication that improves transparency in the supply chain. Communication of data and information, that is speed, that is shared with timely and in a concise manner, allows for various parties to coordinate activities amongst themselves very quickly. And obviously, optimization of resources. I think we are all hard pressed. We want to have best returns on the investments that we are making from a resource point of view. We want to definitely cut back on the losses that are there, and people who are there in the retail sector effectively know that the losses that are incurred because of out of date, it can actually amount to a lot. How do we ensure that we have got right levels of and optimum levels of inventory right across the value chain? How do we quicken the identification of process and supplier difficulties? Today we are in a world wherein our supply chains are absolutely vulnerable to the kind of scenarios that we are seeing, and they have really struggled, many of them. So are we prepared from a future point of view where we are this particular pandemic is just one of the many that we might be actually facing? I mean, touch wood, we don't see any situations of this in the near next decade or so, but we need to be prepared. So how do we ensure that we are resilient? I think that's the key word. And raise the effectiveness of logistics and distributor operations. So very important that we have got a finger on the pulse, and we are exactly knowing where and what is happening in the distribution cycle. And obviously, it helps greatly to prevent contamination. I think that is something which every industry is facing. Counterfeit goods, spurious products, contaminated products for that matter, and especially in the case of food, there are some very key where the consumers are actually paying premium to source these products, and if they are not getting the right value for their money, it raises a lot of questions. So it becomes an equally responsible for the suppliers of these products to ensure that what they are delivering to the consumers, it's of right quality. So before I kind of hand it over to Yogesh, who's going to talk about some specifics, I thought it's important to touch upon some prerequisites, and I'm conscious of the time. These are some of the basic fundamental blocks that make up for a traceability system. You need to have the essential information. So that is basically touching all data that you need to capture: who, what, when, where, and how. There is extensive analysis that is required about your existing processes, and really identifying what specific data points are to be collected. Full chain traceability is of paramount importance. Even if one of the links is actually broken, then it defeats the purpose. And what we talk about in full chain traceability is external as well as internal traceability. So external is between the players, and internal is inside each of these players. If there is product transformation happening, product handling is actually happening, the entire traceability has to be has to be part of this broader ecosystem and activity. Effective tracking of product transformations. Products are formed, are derived out of various contributing entities for that matter. Now the link has to be there, and that has to be consciously tracked and monitored. Otherwise, again, it will defeat the purpose. I think digital information and standardized data formats. Traceability systems, the primary and paramount importance of a successful traceability system is data that you are actually capturing. Now, data, if captured in a digital way and in a way that is secure, is going to prove the resilience, the effectiveness, and the efficiency of the traceability system. And that is where Yogesh is also going to touch upon concepts like blockchain. Verification, definitely all that we are doing traceability is to ensure that we are adhering to some norms, adhering to some regulatory requirements, adhering to some safety requirements. So it is important that we have got systems to kind of verify all that data that you're actually capturing. And last but not the least, transparency and public access to information. Again, you have to take care of the governance that goes around what data goes in there, who has got access. But I think it's of importance that whenever there is any need for accessing the data in the traceability system, it is accessible easily, and obviously following the norms. But you can rely on that data as well. So those are some of the basics that I wanted to basically quickly touch upon before now I hand it over to Yogesh, who's gonna take you through the exciting world of blockchain, AI, IoT, and how all these concepts have been put into into a live case, and we have delivered value to a client. So yeah, thanks for all that, and yes, over to you, Yogesh.
Thank you very much, Prabith. Very good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And it's fantastic, Prabith. You set the context very well. I just was trying to write few of the words that you captured around the food safety, around foodborne diseases, various actors involved in a supply chain, coordination, communication among them, reliability of information, near real time, exception handling, and all that, right? So that is all very good, and it should get covered in the concept that we have brought in today. So thanks for that. So as we understand, there is an increasing need from both business and consumer, right, for supply chain transparency and traceability. The detached nature of supply chains, as we all know, it leads to increasing level of risks for multinational businesses, making transparency both critical and complex. And that is what is driving various organizations to look for suitable technology solutions, right? The solutions can be built through various choice and use of technologies, and many of the times the business needs is driven by either, and that's what we have seen, right? So the business need may be coming from anywhere. One of them could be the brand reputation perspective. Consider a car from a reputed car maker coming to standstill due to a spurious part, right? Or the requirement, again, the business need may be coming from a requirement from a regulator. As we were working with one of the fiber manufacturer, the requirement was the fiber being sourced for manufacturing garments is coming from a sustainable source. So that specific example was both coming from the regulator as well as the promise by the brand that they are using the fiber for the manufacturing of the garments coming from a specific source, right? So that level of trust, if they have to establish, there has to be a mechanism to tell the end consumer that what is the provenance of the material, that is all the raw material. What is the entire journey that raw material has taken? And it becomes complex in fiber manufacturing. We'll specifically touch on food, but where the raw material itself is changing shape, right? It becomes much more complex out there. So there are various emerging technologies and innovative solutions that are being made available, are being built to improve the way an organization can capture, share, manage, and analyze the data. For, of course, as Prabith mentioned, for both internal teams as well as external partners on where and how the raw materials are sourced, right? Key features of any such platform is, of course, a database to store all the information of the supply chain that is being tracked, analytics capability to enable reports. For example, I may need to show the supply chain on the maps. There is a whole lot of integration that is required with multiple data sources to fetch the data, such as maybe the origin, where it is coming from, the information about the farmers in this specific case, the where this food is being say grown, the land, the contractual obligations of third-party certifications who are involved, the exporter information, who is importing, the various environmental conditions through which this food is put to, and some very specific similar information that would be required. And of course, during this particular journey, I may also need to have an ability to read and store barcodes, QR codes, or whatever mechanism is being used to track this entire stuff. And then there is some very specific information that is important, or various features that are important are availability of such system, the data security while we're dealing with the data, the resilience, auditability is very, very important, and data protection and confidentiality, that is some of the key things. Keeping these 4 or 5 things that I mentioned in mind, I would like to introduce you to one such technology, and that is blockchain, that I want to take it up out here. There, as I mentioned, there are various innovative technology solutions and technologies available out there. We are seeing it from a lens of how we saw it for a specific customer. and similar cases that we have been working on in last 3 to 4 years. When it comes to blockchain, a lot has been said and talked about for last many years. So I'll touch upon the high-level basics of what a blockchain is all about. One thing I would like to mention, I always do right in the beginning, blockchain cannot solve all the problems of the world, right? So basically, as nihilent, as problem solvers, we keep asking a question to ourselves every time we are solving a particular problem, whether this is the technology. We always take a holistic view and always check upon whether blockchain is a solution in this specific case to solve that particular problem. Coming to this, what is it all about, right? It's a decentralized, transparent ledger with the transaction records. The database that is shared by all network nodes. So it's a network of computers, network of participants, network of actors who are involved in a particular specific, say, supply chain or a specific use case or a problem that is being solved. It is monitored by everyone, transparent, and owned and controlled by no one, right? So it's a distributed ledger for us. It has many replicas, multiple copies of this particular ledger is maintained. It is data that is stored. It is a transaction that is stored, secured perfectly by cryptography. Whatever we write is right once. It's irreversible, it's immutable, and that's what makes it completely auditable. One of the perfect example I always take, though we do not support or get into anything to do with cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin till date has been the best, one of the best implementations of such implementation of this technology, right? So I can actually track back absolutely how anything moving on that network has exchanged hands right since the inception till whatever date that network has been running. Near real time, depending upon, again, the choice of the blockchain platform that we are using, choice of how the configurations have been made, and so on. There are absolutely no intermediaries out here. That's what it removes. And that's the beauty of this. And then one of the best things, blockchain just not holds the transaction, but it also holds the business logic into the same blocks or the network, right? Which is very, very important. And it gives me a ability to execute a contract based on a value that changes or a value that is updated onto this blockchain network, right? That's one of the very, very key things about the blockchain. I've already talked about the smart contract. It triggers an event every time something is true, maybe an expiration date, or there is a strike price is hit, and so on and so forth, right? The smart contracts permit trusted transaction and agreements to be carried out among the spread. The parties who are exchanging the information, exchanging stuff may be anonymous, but the contract or the contract is a public ledger. The key value drivers for blockchain, it gives us an enhanced transparency, risk reduction, traceability, and efficiency, minimizes the fraud. Auditability is the best thing about it. It comes built in. From here, I'll take it further. We have been working on various different use cases in different industries, and it has been a very exciting journey. One best thing I saw about blockchain was the bitter rivals. I'm talking about insurance industry. Bitter rivals on the ground for the same industry coming together, joining hands, using this technology for implementation of a use case, sharing information among each other. And that's what blockchain did. Else, there was absolutely impossible to actually get them all together. And I mentioned upfront, blockchain cannot solve all the problems of the world, or even if it is solving, there is a whole lot of tools and technologies involved when we're talking about building solutions. And some of the complementary technologies are AI and IoT. It's worth to mention because they actually work hand in hand and are very critical for success of some of these things. For example, I'll maybe touch upon it later also. No matter it's blockchain, right? No matter whatever key features that we talked about, but it's data, garbage in, garbage out. So it's very critical in terms of the information, and that's what takes a whole lot of planning and pre-work to actually start when we start say rolling out a solution. So it's very important, even in the blockchain case, that we implement something or control something in a way that the right information goes into the network. And that's where we have been talking a lot, and a whole lot of stuff is happening around machine-to-machine communication. And IoT is one such thing that really plays a big role out there. Prabith touched upon the provenance. Prabith touched upon spurious items. Talked about, food issues in supply chain. Adulteration is some other issues. One classic example is farm to fork, right? That we all talk about. This is something that we work very close to one of our customers, and I'll talk about it in a bit more of a detail. But when we're talking about provenance, when we're talking about supply chain transparency, traceability, it's not about just farm to fork. It's also about the entire pharma industry. It's about the drugs. There's a whole lot of problem out there as well. In terms of whether they are fake drugs being introduced into the supply chain. What I'm eating, it directly affects me, right? It is also applicable very much, and I talked about say even the spurious say spare parts getting into the vehicles. That itself is a problem, right? So this example actually is can be applied to various other industries as such. And while this entire thing is done, and we'll talk about a bit more about it when we're getting into specifics, at each step, the information getting from an IoT kind of a device. So, while we are shipping, for example, the truck that, as you see in this picture, the information on at what temperature the food was maintained, which was supposed to be while it was being transferred from one location to another location. How do I know that? If there's a contractual agreement between two parties, how do I get that? So an IoT device feeding information real time into the blockchain network is a much more better way of doing it than someone looking at what the temperature is and then going and feeding into the computer. People can make mistakes. It can be a mistake, it can be done in purpose, right? So that's why, it's very important that it works hand in hand. Another example we worked with one of our customers, it was forest to fashion, primarily driven by regulator, but then they also turned it around. Even in the first case, they turned it around, where actually the end customer, when they try and see the end consumer, when they try and see the information through various means, we'll talk about a few of them, you can actually display more information that you wish to end consumer to see, where in the case maybe of a fiber manufacturer, there may never be a visibility of the brand, as well as sometimes in the exporter who is exporting the food items, fruits, and so on, may not have that level of visibility. And in this network also that we were working with, there were some 5,500 intermediaries in this forest to fashion scenario, where a regulator was talking about using of sustainable fiber for manufacturing of the garments, for example. And the classic one where these technologies actually come together is an example of connected cars, right? So blockchain and AI, they can work together in a self-driving vehicle applications or something like this, right? Consider a scenario where a fleet of fully autonomous taxis can work together to communicate about location, routes, and where each car is relative to others on the road in real time, right? Now we can compare the blockchain network to a nervous system, always communicating with each other through a whole lot of IoT stuff as part of those cars, but with each other to learn from their mistakes. If a car does some sort of mistake, there are algorithms which will learn on its own, and it will communicate it back to the rest of the cars. I'll not name the manufacturer. I was reading through one such examples where a guy who was running with such car, auto driver, and on a particular turn, for the first time, he was having some problems in terms of the car was not accustomed to a specific turn in the city. And after a few times, the car was able to learn on its own. And then once it learned, then absolutely every car in that car manufacturer network learned it on its own. So they can learn on their own. So all that can really, all the nice stuff can happen through use of these complementary technologies working in together. And before I take you to the next one, just while mention one more very interesting case, and that is bean to cup, the coffee thing, right? And I was just going through it in terms of how AI and blockchain was being put to use, where what we could do is the AI could measure the quality of the coffee beans and predict the weather and growing patterns. While in the same use case, the bean to cup, the blockchain immutably records the farmer where the beans originated and the exact specification of the coffee shipment. Where was the origin? What was the shipment? If everything that is required from the regulatory perspective or from well-being of the beans has been taken care of during the shipment, right? So this is how they have been working together, these technologies. And when we come to end-to-end solution to using these technologies together, I mean, there are some very high-level three important points that I would like to bring out here. While data has its own life cycle, trust has to be across life cycle and across parties. Since there are so many multiple actors involved, Prabith touched upon that, standard has to be maintained to get the trust going. And then the trust on security. There has to be a policy engine for sharing of the data, right? Because not all or every actor may like all the information to be disclosed. For example, a farmer may not like to disclose the deal price he has had with some exporter. Now coming to the specific use case I was talking about, I'll try and do a bit more of a deep dive into this use case. Of course, food traceability is a need for everyone. Everyone has their own kind of needs when it comes to food traceability. From the regulator perspective and similar agencies, I mean, they need to look at whether the imported item adhere to the food regulation. Has the food been tested by an independent approved lab? For example, there are third parties who are involved in testing whether the pesticides that have been used and the maximum residue level, the MRL value on them pre and post harvest, whether they are at a particular level. Every country has their own regulation where they say what is the permissible value of that, which is very important. The independent labs take care of that. Has the exporter fulfilled all the compliance requirement? Is the labeling itself correct? And where the environmental condition adhered to during the shipping process. For example, if food was supposed to be shipped at between 2 and 3 degree temperature, whether it was done so, right? So this is some very specific requirement. When it comes to us, and when we look at such kind of news all around about food safety, foodborne diseases, and such kind of incidents, I just picked up few from the specific continent, but this is the case through and through. I just picked up one from classic one from outside, and which was to do with the Walmart with the leafy vegetable and the E. coli, which triggered them to actually create a full platform, and that was a blockchain-based platform for all such suppliers, and it was made mandatory that all such information need to be really put into that particular platform. So yeah, that's a worry. Is my food safe? What I'm eating, what I'm picking up from the superstore is always going to be a concern. Coming to agri-product journey that we took, there is, as I mentioned, there's a whole lot of stuff that has to be done in before actually getting into this. This means getting to those farmers, understanding the processes, where we actually get into a lot of this large meeting rooms, do whole lot of whiteboarding sessions, all sort of those yellow slips, writing down the process, putting the entire chain on the board and drawing it out, and then step by step identifying where is the problem, where are the challenges, which challenges can be automated, what can be solved using which particular technology, and then the solution really is designed. In this specific case, we were talking about farmers exporting fruits from a specific country and region and exporting to various other countries. There are various actors involved. One is the farmer. A farmer in this specific country I'm talking about has to tell the government and register the land, telling them that this land will be used to grow what and for the purpose of export. That's one kind of a contractual agreement. Second contractual agreement the farmer gets into is with the exporter, saying, okay, I will grow this particular item for you. A whole lot of checklist is provided to them, to the farmer, which they adhere to. Then there are sampling labs. At pre-harvest, samples are taken. They go to the sampling labs. These are independent parties who then check those samples and then convey back to the exporter that, okay, this is the MRL value of this particular fruit that has been grown by the farmer. That ultimately decides whether this fruit can actually be exported to any of the countries, if it's within an X value, or the country that I decided to. And as I said, there could be a different regulation for different countries. So that is what really comes into picture out there. So these are independent parties, independent certificates be generated. Post that, once it gets through, it's loaded onto the trucks, gets into the pack houses. Pack houses do their own quality checks, right? And there are challenges which I'll come out there also. They do their quality checks. They start doing the packing, the punnets and pallets and punnets and other stuff are all packed. They are put into the cold storage. While that is all happening, the shipping line process is started in parallel, right? And that information comes once that is all through and they are ready to ship. A truck comes with the container, which is regulated by which can regulate the temperature, humidity, and other environmental stuff that is required. The packages are loaded onto the truck. That container gets to the ship, gets onto the shipping line, and gets to the importer. The key reason or driver for this implementation was all the checks that are done at the source by the exporter are repeated at the destination country in this specific case, and they are pretty expensive stuff in terms of doing those samples out there. And this one, as well as the other one I spoke about earlier in the fiber case. So one of the reasons for doing this was, and that's where we were trying to see if the business case stacks up. We could see that even if we could bring down the create enough trust in the supply chain for the importer, for their regulator, and if we can bring down the tests that are being done at the destination, which is borne by the exporter, by the way, then this solution will pay for itself, even if you can bring it down by 10%, right? So that was one of the big drivers. And then the second thing that they achieved out of this during the work that we did was, when this from the importer then is distributed to various retailers, shops, where people like you and me go and buy that stuff. We buy that punnet of, say, grapes or a packet of apples and so on and so forth. And then there is a QR code printed on top of that. I can actually scan that QR code and see the entire information about where did this come from, what's the source. Maybe I can also show who has grown it, who are the third parties who have certified it, what are those certifications that has been done, and whether everything else during this has been taken care of or not. So that is the kind of journey that we took. While I talked about the blockchain layer, there's a specific set of information every time. So the contractual obligations between the farmer and the government was not required at this point in time. The contracts between the farmer and the exporter, that were stored onto the blockchain. Then all the information about the third-party verification that is being done, the certificates being generated were also being uploaded. The pack house information of the pack house in terms of loading of the packages into the cold storage and all, and then the transportation and everything. In this case, we had a challenge. I'll talk about it a bit later in terms of the containers being offline and the online information not being available through means of having IoT enabled containers. And then there is a whole application layer where different kind of individuals or authorities can look at the information for verification. It could be authorities, it could be brand providers, it could be customers, and so on and so forth. They can actually scan the code and see whether the product is a counterfeit, it's labeled properly, it's a genuine product or not, right? So that is something that we did. This is something that if you scan this particular QR code, I mean, this is just a sample, I'm showing it to you. You can actually see who is the person, the farmer who has grown this. You can actually track the entire information, when it went to the lab tested, when was this harvested, when was it packaged, where it was packaged, and you can also give the rating and all through this. You can be a mobile app that can be provided. And then, of course, if you want, you can even give the GPS location, and people can see where exactly it actually came from. It all depends on what is required, what is not required, what information can be shared, not shared, what the exporter wants to share, and so on. But all that can really go in here, including the quality information, the quality certificate, who certified it, and all that kind of stuff can actually be seen. The complete traceability that we were talking about can be guaranteed out here. And then, of course, dashboards with showing all the information that can be provided to different stakeholders depending upon what they want to track, what they want to see. All these dashboards and can be designed, devised so through specific means. We'll touch upon that maybe a bit later if we are time permitting. Some of the challenges and learnings that we saw. Business adoption is definitely something that came up as a challenge. Onboarding multiple parties is the most challenging stuff, I'll tell you. It's very, very difficult, and it was comparatively easier here. But the other case I was talking about, where if you're doing a use case with people or the organization competing within the same space, it's the most difficult one. But of course, we have been one of the organizations who have actually built a consortium of companies from scratch for some specific use cases. So we do understand really the challenges where it comes from. Then issues with the existing business processes, up-to-date and correct data availability. It's all about data, as I said, right? Data, if it's garbage in, garbage out. So you have to really go through the entire process of identifying where the data is coming from, data is correct or not correct, and available or not available. Governance is another one. Overall administration of the consortium and technology platform itself, it has to be with the third party. So the rules of consortium has to be laid down. When we started some 3 to 4 years back, it was a real challenge, but now some technology partners that we partner with have really built some nice platforms where some of these things are automatically taken care of while we are building something like this. So these are some of the challenges, some learnings. Blockchain cannot solve all the problems of the world. I mentioned that, so we always keep that in our mind, not to push blockchain, but to always focus on solving the problem and whatever it takes to solve the problem. Data is key, as we saw. I mean, it's all about that, right? Active participation of the consortium members is key for success. If it's not going to happen, the entire thing is not going to work. Automation, key. M2M communication. We should reduce human intervention in terms of information moving into such solutions, primarily when blockchain is being used to reduce human intervention of data input. So those were some of the learnings to be taken care of. Next steps specific to this use case that we have thought of was upgrade and modernize of the packaging house infrastructure. We realized there was no clear way or straightforward way of or automated way of scanning through when after packaging the items went into the cold storage and when it did not. Second challenge that we saw was the entire container network, which I now know some large players, they have started working on having online containers where the environmental conditions like temperature, humidity, and others can be actually transmitted real time. And that really allows us to now bring together multiple networks. For example, a supply chain network of food. If once we have such kind of information, we can now have been thinking of bringing it together with an insurance network and a bank network, all three working together for insurance of food in transit, food items in transit, as well as the payments being made through the automated triggers of smart contracts. Integration with the shipping line business network, that's what I was just talking about, critical. The one that we implemented, the logger was offline. So at when the container reaches the destination, they download the information and feed that into the machine at the moment. And then explore a pilot integration of insurance business network. I just spoke about that, where then we can have an insurance. So we are already running a separate insurance consortium. We are now looking to really bring these two networks together to run a case where we can actually make sure that the insurance for the goods in transit can be done, and it can be controlled through the various factors like critical to insurance, whether food remains in the good condition or not, through smart contracts, of course, and the IoT devices that are fed and which maybe can calculate the insurance amount to be paid maybe on an hourly basis. That's a hypothesis based on temperature and humidity and other factors being true, right? So this is something that we are working on. Very exciting, keen to take forward. I thought I'll share it with you. So yeah, that's all from me. I'll hand it over here to Prabith. I hope we are running on time. So over to you, Prabith.
No, absolutely. Thanks so much, Yogesh, for that insightful presentation. It was quite nice to actually see that how concepts that we have been hearing about and talking about are implemented in real life, and how we are really solving some real life problems. I think you fell short of just mentioning that the work that we have delivered with this client of ours, which is a global player. In fact, it is in use. So consumers of that particular supplier can really go to the to the retail outlets, pick up this this fruit, and the QR code that's on top of it. They can actually scan it and see all this data in real action, for that matter. So it's I believe it's a great application of all these technologies that have come together. I know we are just about 8 minutes away from closing the webinar, so I'll hand it over to Caitlin. Caitlin, for the Q&A. So Caitlin, if there are any questions, please, we'll be more than happy to actually answer them.
Yes, thank you so much. And just another reminder, if you do have a question, please enter it into the questions pane in the GoToWebinar menu, and we will get to them as we have time. We have a few in the queue, so I'm going to start with those. The first question is, could the traceability concept be customized for other applications, like tracking the flow of goods to ensure that it gets to the intended destination? Their example is thinking about the recent problem with fraud during the COVID-19 PPE procurement in South Africa.
No, absolutely, it can be. I think I touched upon some of those things. This concept that we explained, I touched upon at least 3 to 4 different use cases around farm to fork, bean to cup. We talked about forest to fashion. And in fact, we have been talking about to various individuals and companies around even tracking the meat. We are talking about tracking more similar kind of fruit items. We have been talking to pharma industry about the tracking of the drugs. There are discussions about even spurious fake spare parts in terms of automobiles, and that too from the two aspects, right, from raw material to a finished good of in terms of a spare part, and then that spare part gets into the entire network, getting into different automobiles. So absolutely it can be applied. I mean, conceptually it can be applied to any. Only thing is, depending upon the problem, the complexity may vary. And we as I said in the beginning of that use case, we need to get onto the whiteboard, draw down the entire process, and then decide where what can be applied in terms of technology.
Fantastic. And that is a great segue to this next question, which they are asking, what are those criteria that you generally make to consider if blockchain is the right technology for an implementation? Like, are there appropriate candidate systems, or what do you normally consider when deciding if blockchain is right for the problem?
Absolutely, it's a very good question. The question that we have to understand the basics of blockchain out there. Blockchain works best where there's a trust deficit. Blockchain works best when there is a network, right? There are parties, distinct parties. Though there is a lot of discussions, and of course there are some use cases that will come and may be already on the floor in terms of doing it for single enterprises, but it works best when we're talking about a network. We're talking about multiple participants, multiple actors who need to share information, and they're working on distinct, disparate systems. and that information has to be really brought in to be shared across the parties to achieve a common goal. It works best there. So stick to the basics of blockchain, the 5 things, 6 things that I talked about. Just go through them. And we also have a framework for that. There is a set of questionnaires that we have other than the basics that I talked about, that we also always do a checkbox tick. It's just a one pager, but very specific questions. But it always revolves around basics of blockchain. We apply that as not this one. We can use other technologies.
Great, thank you. Next question is, from our understanding, there's a big dependency on data and interoperability. What would you advise on overcoming these challenges?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, the thing is, interoperability has been, I mean, I would say we have discussed some key potentials of blockchain already, right? So, I mean, the interoperability issues are there. What has happened is, last many years, there was so much of hype. I'm happy that we have come down of the hype cycle, that there were so many blockchain networks that have been put into place, right? And why the major concern out here is all these blockchain different networks, business networks that have been created from the interoperability perspective. I mean, are they talking to each other, right? If these business networks are not able to talk to each other, if they are working in silos, I mean, that is stopping, and that will stop the mass adoption of the blockchain thing, right? So a lot is being talked about there. A lot is being done, and people are trying to address it in different ways. There is no one absolute way out. I mean, there are solutions. I'm not saying there's solution not there, but there are parties who are trying to work on making sure that the different blockchain networks talk to each other. For example, we work very closely with even Coda out there, but there also, I mean, there, if you create a business network on that network, so various networks like bank networks, an insurance network, a supply chain network, they can all actually talk to each other because the way it has been implemented as a platform. But then what if I need to speak to a network built on a different technology, right? So people have built some interfaces, people have built various APIs and interaction ways of one chain talking to each other. But then the questions are always there as a question mark. What happens to the data when it leaves one network and enters the another network? So yes, interoperability between blockchain networks is certainly a slight hindrance to I mean, mass adoption, but the solution is around the corner.
Great, thank you. The next question is, does Neelan provide the entire spectrum of services involved in implementing traceability systems?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take that. Yeah, Yogesh. So yes, I think that's a very relevant question, and specifically in context of us doing this particular webinar, because if you look at the construct of building a traceability system, it definitely involves right from the beginning understanding and interpreting various scenarios in which you need to basically start by exploring whether what should be the construct of the traceability system. So how should actually operate, function, writing the business case, ensuring that we rightly identify the entire value chain. And Neelan, given the design thinking led approach that we adopt at Neelan, it kind of like gives us that ability to really start by unpacking the business, start by unpacking the scenario, and not just in the eyes and ears of those who are running a business, but also in the eyes and ears of the consumers at the end of the day. So it involves that element of bringing that empathy engagements, for that matter, into picture. Definitely, our ability from a process competence and our capabilities when it comes to process engineering, process modification, process outlining comes in very handy, because at the end of the day, this is an entire value chain. Our ability and our competence when it comes to laying out data infrastructure and analytics definitely comes in a lot handy. And we have been doing, rather, a lot of engagements in the space of AI and especially dealing with IoT. So obviously, like, Yogesh mentioned, all of these are complementary. All of these actually come together. And, given our experience in terms of making it happen in real life, many other who are basically looking at adopting it will come in. We can actually, work on the experience that we bring to fore. And last but not the least, I think today we are all in need to track, monitor, manage all these developments at the click of a button. So there is a lot of developments from a visualization point of view. So as part of Neelant, in terms of our consulting, analytics, and technology expertise, we bring that also to the table. So all-encompassing one-stop shop, wherein Neelant can be a partner for those organizations who are looking at implementing these traceability systems. And last but not the least, our strategic partnerships with various technology players, likes of the Microsofts and the SAPs and the others, really come in handy as well. So so I think in short, Caitlin, definitely we've got a range and spectrum of services that we can actually bring together to kind of like formulate these kind of like traceability systems for that matter. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it looks like we are at the end of the webinar. So Prabith, I'm going to have you switch to the next slide. And if you could close us out, that would be wonderful.
Awesome, great. So I'll request Yogesh, if he doesn't mind, shifting to the next slide. So thank you very much for for participating in this webinar. And I think we definitely want to, if you see merit in it, let me actually put the other way. If you see merit in what we just actually spoke about, by all means, we are open to suggestions from your side, further discussions from your side. We are happy to come and ideate with you to help you kind of like take those initial steps in terms of building this traceability system that might be beneficial for you as an organization, on your own or as part of a broader value chain. So here are our details. Feel free to write to us, and we'll really look forward to engaging with you in the coming days, for that matter. So with that, a big thank you from myself, Yogesh, Vikash, and then Caitlin, and it was really good to spend some time and share our experience with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.